just hit that button.
Just hit that button.
And then it says record in big red. And that's how we know we're recording.
Been doing it for 14 seconds now.
And now it's 18 seconds.
Okay.
Is that going to be the whole show?
Are we ready to go?
People will be riveted.
Yes.
Yes, we're ready to go. Hi.
Good morning. Aina Toth.
Aina Toth. Thank you.
Hi. So, should we start with recognizing and acknowledging where we are here in Nanaimo land? We're on the traditional and unceded territory of the Nanaimo Nation, and for their partnership and allyship and for all their history and their culture and working together towards a better future, we are grateful. Haisepka.
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 Again, that's the plural for thank you.
Okay. Thank you. So, I like to give people background to things. So, you and I have done a few of these now.
It's been a while for me. Good to see you again.
But it has been a while, but we've done a few of these.
Yes.
And I don't know if it's this way for you, but I sometimes think like, there's no way people want to listen to us again. Like they must be, I'm sick of me. They must be sick of me too. Right?
Well, the onus is, now I was telling Thomas how much I enjoyed the conversation with Nico Rhodes. Far from being sick of that. So as long as we keep interesting, we'll be good. Yeah,
as long as we keep it interesting. Yeah. So let's hope we can keep it interesting. And so with what's going on in our congregation right now, with the changes that are approaching quickly, there's going to be a move. There is the date is now moving towards us quite aggressively.
It is.
And we will have to find a new place to be.
We have big decisions and big changes to
and
to.
It's interesting to see where people are at, because there's some that are yay, some that are nay, and some that are in the middle. And as you and I have discussed this, as we discuss amongst us what might we do, what might we not do, what are we afraid of, all of those things.
Exactly.
As we discussed this the other day, I thought it would be appropriate to have a conversation around that. And what came to me, so I'll open it with this parable, if that's okay, and then we can just jam on this.
You go for it.
As to it. So the parable, I think it's Mark 2:22 or Matthew. I didn't write it down. Anyhow, doesn't matter.
Doesn't.
Neither do they put new wine in old wineskins, or else the skins burst, and the wine is spilled, and the skins perish. But they put new wine into fresh wineskins, and both are preserved.
Amen.
Yeah. And that's it.
But, there's something consistent about change. Everybody goes through change, and there's stages, and there's emotions. And so we're just a good example for everybody else to acknowledge what they probably have faced and will face again in future.
So when I think about what we're doing here and the work we're doing here, and the idea that if right now there is a trajectory that Unity of Vancouver Island is on, I don't think I'm going to insult anybody or be ridiculous, but we have an aging population.
We do,
right? Inside of our congregation.
Yes,
I'm one of them.
I'm the bigger one.
Yeah, I'm part of that. And if there's nothing we need to do. Let's put that in the forefront. That there's absolutely nothing that has to happen. However, if there is a desire to expand, grow, continue, move on, have a legacy, have a place to serve people for years and years and years to come, with the mind that there's going to be people coming, then there's some things that need to likely be different than what they are currently. Because the data says, no matter how I've looked at it, how it's come out in the US and Canada, the data says that Sunday morning is not the thing.
It's true.
It once was.
And generally speaking, church is not what it once was.
Yes, it doesn't have that embedded mindset that may have come from parents down to the youth. And if it did, some of those youth are not interested and they're looking for something different. So it's not that spirituality, a raising of consciousness, the planet becoming one, all of that. It's not that that's not on the table. It's that it's being seen as a different way to do it than what mom and dad did or grandma and grandpa did.
Right. And it's not that the young people aren't interested. Actually, they probably hunger for it more than ever, but it's a slightly different thing that they're hungering for, and we're still offering the same old stuff. And so they go online, or they go play soccer,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I also just, having 2 teenage daughters in my house and seeing their friends and how they interact, the idea that, like a perfect example, last night I came home, I went out to see a rock concert last night.
Cool.
Big Sugar. It was awesome. It was really loud. I'm glad I had earplugs, but it was a great show. I got home, 10:30-ish, 10:45, and one of my kids is on their phone playing Roblox with a friend of hers as they're on their computers together and they're on their phones together. And at any given time, there could be 3 or 4 or 5 more friends on there doing the same thing. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it's both my daughters, each in their own bedroom, communicating with the phone, and that's just normal for them.
That's right. Yeah.
This thing of Sunday morning is like, well, what do you do that for?
Yeah.
Like I could just be right. And so there's the connection, and they'll probably at some point seek that human connection out more than just
of course
the video.
Yeah. Right.
However, they're showing me that there is a different mindset around how to communicate and how to be in relationship with other people.
Yeah. And more than, I think change is just happening faster than ever in history before. And we've always had to adapt to change. It's never been that comfortable. Well, some people love change. Mm-hmm. They embrace the uncertainty. But for a lot of people, there's a fear, actually. It's fear of change.
Yeah.
And just fear that I won't be able to handle the change, or I won't be good enough for this. And so I want to stay where I know I'm good.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, the world is moving on.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, isn't there a saying like the devil I know? Something to that effect.
The devil we know is better than the devil we fear, or something like that.
Yeah. And so when I bring that to the parable, if we as a congregation and a movement, if you will, the New Thought movement, if we want to move into what the future looks like from where this started back in the early 1900s, mm-hmm. I mean, you got to think, like, let's just even go back then. Unity was way ahead of a lot of people.
Sure.
When they started, they were doing, they bought a printing press so that they could get the daily word out. They had mail delivery every day for the prayer hotline and answered those prayers every day and sent them back out. Like they were doing things that were not
normal.
They were quickly embracing the technology that was available to them at each step of the way so they could get their message out.
Yeah.
And so when I think of the parable, if there's a changing world in front of us, and if we want to develop ourselves into that, there's some old wineskins that we're
not going to start putting snail mail in the mail to answer prayer anymore.
Right. There's things we need to let go, and they might be some hard choices, and they might be tough, and I think what is being asked, at least what I feel is being asked of me and you, perhaps, well, I won't speak for you, for me, is to think of this in a way where there's compassion for what is and what has been, mm-hmm. and an open mind and heart and soul to what is in front of us.
Yeah.
And how do you merge those together in a way where you don't, cut your arms off?
Yes.
But at the same time, you kind of have to pin those arms back a little bit.
Very, very early in my ministry, another minister said to me, every time you make a change, you will lose some people and you will gain some people. Mm-hmm. And I have a little diagram here that kind of illustrates how change happens. I don't know whether they see. But this is our community now. It's a little circle of people, all friendly, all in this little circle of love and everything. And something has to change because it's not quite working. So how change happens is this. Somebody called the innovator, and you maybe think of somebody like Nikola Tesla, Elon Musk, maybe Nikola Tesla is the innovator here, and these are the early adapters. They're the people who say, yeah, maybe he's got a point, let's give it a try. Maybe there's where Elon Musk comes in. And then gradually, I'm working on the wrong end, I think, aren't I? No, yeah, this is this right here. No! Hey, there, okay.
It's backwards.
It is backwards, excuse me.
That's all right, you'll figure it out.
So the early innovator bumps up against the edges of the circle.
Yep.
And it starts to expand into an oblong, and it does that. And gradually people come in, and then you have your early, what do they call those?
Early adopters?
Early adopters, and then there's the early and late majority. And then there's a few trail off. But as we go along here, there's a few that come in from outside. But then as we go along further, there's a few that just drop off the end. And that's what change looks like. So somebody has to start it.
Yeah.
Somebody has to take that risk to get out there and say, let's try this and see if it works for today, if this is relevant today.
Yeah. You sparked a couple of examples for me. So there's a movie out called Blackberry, which is about the BlackBerry and how that came out and just completely swept the business world and then the communication world. And a lot of change happened, and then they weren't willing to innovate the way things were quickly changing. They tried to stay in their old ideas, and now they're nothing.
Nobody has a BlackBerry anymore.
Yeah, completely gone. But what the second part of this is the iPhone changed the landscape, and they still thought they were the king of the castle when actually the iPhone was.
Right.
The funny part of this for me is that as the iPhone came out, I'm thinking my daughters were, 4 years old or something. I'm not sure, but they grew up with an iPhone.
Sure.
That's what we use. I haven't had a home telephone line for years. I don't even know how long it's been. It's been that long. And I remember one day I asked them who invented the telephone, and they said Steve Jobs. And it was like,
of course,
I just had to take that moment of like, oh wow.
Yeah.
I've never talked to them about Alexander Graham Bell and like long distance and all of that stuff that I experienced, dial telephones. So in their world, the telephone came from Steve Jobs, when in actual fact, that's not true,
that's
right?
Marvelous.
But it's that adaptation that happened, and their perspective is like, why would you ever want a dial telephone? But of course, they don't have the concept that there was nothing else that existed.
Exactly.
That.
So there's a lot of things I guess that we're still doing that younger people are saying, why on earth would you ever want?
Yeah.
So somebody has to step out. There was a video, I don't know, maybe you've seen it, I think it was a big picnic ground, a lot of people around, and one young man put on his radio and his Bluetooth speaker, and he started to dance. And everybody laughed at him and said, "Oh, look at that!" And then
he was in a field, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And then somebody joined him, and then
And it's when that second person
they're
joined.
coming over the hill, and that's this activity.
Yeah, it's once that second person joined, it was almost like then people started to go, okay, well now he's not the weird one out.
Right.
There's somebody else that's also weird, and
maybe weird's okay.
And I'm okay with being a little weird. So now that there's somebody, and then of course it turns into a big dance party, right? Everybody then gets involved.
The other thing I thought of was the young woman who in one country stood blindfolded on the street with free hugs on her chest, just stood like this. And she stood like that for a long time. And then somebody responding came and gave her a hug. And then and pretty soon people were lined up.
Yeah.
So it's like having the courage to just step out and do something untried before. If it doesn't work, you can always recorrect.
Yeah.
But that's courage. Yeah. Willingness to fall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I guess part two of this is, and this isn't, so I also want to paraphrase this or just put a disclaimer on it. This isn't that my opinion is right, that what I want to do is the right thing. I have my opinions just as everybody else does, and they're as equally as valid as mine. I just know what I feel inside myself, and I get a microphone to share it. So I'm doing that. Yeah. The other thing I think about this in terms of, and this is where maybe my 20 plus years in finance and working with families and individuals around finance, I have seen a full spectrum of people. I have seen those where it feels like it just seems like money falls into their lap. Mm-hmm. And I've seen those where it just is a constant struggle. Yeah. And I never had a basis to understand it until I really jumped into the Unity Prosperity teachings. And now I do have sort of like, I have, I guess, if I wanted to think of it in the terms of the triangle, I have the world of the haves, the world of the have-nots, and then I have this idea that I've learned from Unity about prosperity consciousness. And what I see for us here, when I think of in terms of us, I like, okay, well, you don't want to just spend money willy-nilly. That doesn't work, right? You want to be responsible with your finance.
Plan.
Well, yeah, you want to be responsible, right? Yep. I don't even like the word budget because it sounds like a limit. I like a...
Well, sometimes it is.
I like a spending plan. We're actually going to spend the money. We know we are.
Right.
Let's plan it.
Yeah.
Let's plan where that money goes. Let's be constructive with it. Yeah. Right. So we build a spending plan, and that should be done. With that, though, is the idea of, well, what comes first? Do we attract new people first and then our income goes up, or do we hang on really tightly to what we have and hope that something new comes along? Which one is going to work? Mm-hmm. You know, I'm of the mind that we need to step out and take some calculated risk.
Yes, of course.
With the flow that we have, be willing to put it into the great unknown to attract.
With a good intention,
yes.
Or as the indigenous people say, in a good way. I love that phrase.
Yes, in a good way. And then that begins to attract back to you the very thing that you're wanting to accomplish. Mm-hmm. Now, along the way, there might be some paths you go down that end up not working.
Yeah,
and then you shut those down. And from that, you've learned. Hopefully, you've learned something that you can then begin to narrow your scope of what it is you're doing till you figure out what works, the messaging that works, the type of classes, the type of events that people are resonating with or looking for, and then you do more of those. But there has to be that willingness, though, to jump into that ring. In order to attract.
And this is one of my pet peeves and favorite sayings is it's not enough to say, I know what you can do. What you need to say is, I have this idea to do something, and I'm willing to do that, rather than, I've had so many people, all my years of reading spiritual books, and I've read, hundreds of them, thousands of them. Somebody comes in for the first time and says, wow, yeah, you should read this book. It's like, who are you to tell me what to read at this stage? But quit your bitching and get out there and be the innovator. Mm-hmm. Be the one who steps out and gets the circle expanding.
When you pray, move your feet.
Move your feet.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, one of the things that I'm very cognizant of in my own life when any growth challenge comes up, but especially so around finance and the flow of, because let's face it, money's important. It just is.
Yep.
Like that's our entire world economic functionality is based on the flow of cash.
Yes, of course.
So let's call it what it is. It's important. Is it everything? No. But it's important. So when I have those moments where I'm feeling like, oh, I'm not in the flow, the natural thing for me to want to do is to squeeze, right? To tighten up the hatches and squeeze more. And whenever I think of that, I just think of I'm squeezing the very life out of it, choking it. So there's a balance there, right? There's the restraint of being responsible. And then there's the opening of, hey, we're going to let this flow.
Yeah. It's not just money. It's just any change.
Sure.
Simon Sinek talks about how difficult it is for some people to change. But he says, we all really need to be changing at all times because we don't know everything. And one of the quotes I loved from his is in the bookstore, there's a whole shelf called self-help. What we really need is a shelf called help others. Because, we want to change because we're thinking of ourselves, our own comfort. And when we realize, more joy comes from being of service than anything else for me. And we realize that's what gives us the courage then to step out and do something different.
You just summarized all of this for me.
Oh.
It is not me only. This is me speaking. Somebody who decided to do this. I don't know why, I just did. It is not my job to hang on to what we have.
Right.
It is my job to go out and share it with as many people as possible. Mm-hmm. And if that's not what I'm doing, I need to be somewhere else doing that.
Right.
Because that is what this is about. It ain't about squeezing and hanging on. It's about opening.
Well, I think everybody wants to be always improving. That's what Simon Sinek calls the infinite mindset. I love the infinite mindset. Blow it open. Yeah.
Well, yeah, but you and I have talked about that though. That the human, because I think when I had previous guest Dr. Suki, him and I are very much of the human potential, and all the work he does in the world is around recognizing the potentiality that is in each one of us, the miracle that this trillions of cells is,
yes,
and how it can heal, how it can grow, how it can create. Like for him, there's nothing more powerful in science. Like there's no science, there's no invention that we have that is more powerful than what this does, because at the end of the day, we still don't know how to make a cell.
It's true.
Right? Like that in itself is amazing.
Yeah.
And we can't invent one in the laboratory.
Right.
This does that.
Yeah.
Right? And so you can get too far into that world that everybody has the potential. I mean, I believe everybody has the potential, but for some people just aren't going to be able to see it. And it's not bad. It's not good or bad. It's not right or wrong. It's just whatever has occurred in their world. It's not. They have a hard time getting over to seeing that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's great for people to struggle and work to become an Olympic athlete or something. And some people don't choose to because they have other priorities. So it's perfectly wonderful also to be normal, average. But we all shine in some area.
Yeah. Well, so I even look at that as like, I'm never going to be an Olympic athlete, but I have the opportunity to be the best dad I could be. I have the opportunity to be the best husband I could be.
Exactly.
I fall short many times, and many times I exceed my own expectations. I do really good.
That's a good time.
Sometimes I really do smart things, and I'm like, wow, that kind of worked out way better than I ever thought.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but you got to take that risk.
Yes.
Got to take that risk. There's something called the law of diffusion.
Okay.
Emmett Rogers came up with this. It's about this change and the innovators. And it's 2.5% of our population are innovators. And it could be in physical, sports and stuff, or it could be...
Well, mental health, physical health, whatever.
Inventing iPhones.
Yeah.
And then 13.5 are the early adapters. So now you're at 15%. Mm-hmm. When you get somewhere between 15 and 18%, that's the tipping point. That's where it's viable and it's going to happen.
Yeah.
And it feels normal. And then everybody wants in
and
said, why didn't you tell us about this? How come we didn't get that? So and then we've got your big majority.
Right. Well, we've all had the opportunity to witness what the iPhone did. Like it literally came out of a combination of a Palm handheld, a BlackBerry, and a computer. And somebody had the intelligence, the creative genius to go, we can make that in a phone and offer music. Like also because they had the, what was the iPod, right? The iPod was already the music player. And then all of a sudden that has completely changed telecommunications around the globe.
Yes.
And think about it, in the last 20 years, how much that has shifted.
I can remember actually sitting in an airport with my son, and he showed me his new iPhone that he just got. I think it was a smartphone.
Yep, smartphone, same thing.
Anyway, and he said, I can do anything in here that I can do on my computer. And I had my flip phone still, and I said, well, I can do anything in my computer that you can do in there, as though I'm going to put my computer on my back and, take it on the plane. But, attitudes change. I don't question it anymore, but I still don't like it. A lot of it, I still don't understand why it works that way or how it works that way, but I understand that it does.
Yeah, well, sometimes we don't need to understand.
No. Sometimes you can just swipe left or whatever it's called.
You can just move on.
Right, yeah.
It's just accept and adapt, right?
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. There was something else that we were that sort of came up while we've been talking here, and that was the idea of expectations. And I think of that joke where there's a flood coming, and and the guy keeps getting opportunities to be saved, but he's like, no, I'm waiting for God's going to save me, and then he ends up on the roof in a helicopter, and he's like, no, God's coming, and then he ends up dead, and challenges God on that, and then God's like, well, I sent you the rowboat, I sent you all of these things, and you just didn't take them.
Exactly.
Right. And so, the message from that to me is that when you have an expectation of the way something is supposed to look, you're stuck. Like, you're actually now stuck in that mindset. Not good or bad, but that's what you're kind of trapped in there. And part of the prosperity consciousness, the abundance consciousness, is the grand idea that you might have, and then letting it go to unfold however it's going to show up.
Well, and that's why when we do affirmative prayer, we actually accept what it is we want. We don't ask for it. We recognize that it is there in potentiality, and we accept it, and then we release. Then we send it out to the universe and say, here, okay, this is what we're going to have. Thanks.
Yeah. I'm not responsible for how it shows up. That's not my job.
Yeah.
My job is to hold the space that this or something greater is coming. It's already given.
Yeah. And we sometimes don't recognize it, and we say no because it sounds like change.
Yeah. So I'm in a place where, we have some big changes that have been set in motion. We've clearly had these things set in motion, and they're coming. They're already upon us, really, in a lot of ways. And I think this is a great time for people to share and communicate, but to also be open, even myself. I have to be open to what I'm not seeing, right? Because I've got my own ideas of how things should go. But it's really about that opening and getting to a place of understanding. And for me, the caveat is always, what are we doing? Like, what is it we're trying to do? Yeah. And if it's clear and concise of what it is we're trying to do, then I think that makes the choice or the path a lot easier to move on to. And it's not yours or mine to tell people what it is we should be doing. It's really up to the people that are involved in our community and our congregation to be clear on what are we doing.
Yeah, and really, it's all about communication, which is difficult. The more people you've got involved, and of course, certain people are at the center of it, doing all the talking and investigating, and we then tend to kind of jump ahead and not realizing maybe we haven't communicated every step to everybody, and so change involves people being patient with each other too, and listening to each other. You may have it be totally in disagreement until you know all the facts.
Yeah.
And then when I hear all your facts, I might open a little too. Have that, what do we call it? The infinite mindset. Open to everything.
Yeah. Well, I think the Zoom calls you've been doing is like, what a great idea you had.
Thank you.
Hear
what people have to think.
If you've got something to say, here's your opportunity. Yeah. If you've got something to say and you choose not to, that's not on us. That's not on you.
True. Yeah.
Right? It's not on. It's up to us to express what there is within us so that we can let it go, right? Like it needs to get to a place of peace and resolve. The best way to do that is to, have somebody listen.
I definitely have had that experience because some of my conversations have been quite long and people had a lot of thoughts to work through. And I try not to answer them before they're finished talking. But then once they've expressed what their concern is and I've brought them up to date with what I know, very often they're reassured and now much more willing to look at it again. So, yeah, I think that's one thing that any organization can benefit from is learning to, even if it's a big company and the employees don't feel respected or heard or then you have to call in the union and fight and all that. Whereas if we all just take the time and patiently breathe and listen to each other, we'll all get there together.
Yeah. Well, we have humanity at risk, so we're a big company.
Good one. Yeah. It's true. What we're doing is vitally important in the world.
I believe so.
And it's not just about, kumbaya and we love each other and keeping it in the circle. It's been so valuable in our lives. Well, you feel the same me. The reason I'm still on this planet is I could still make a difference in people's lives by what I know.
Yeah. Well, when I think of the difference that this has made for me, how could I not want to share it?
Yeah.
Like that's the place I come from. It's like, why would I keep this to myself? Yeah. This is like, that seems kind of silly to me.
Yeah. Here, chocolate. Have you ever discovered chocolate before? Yeah, like, wow. Yeah.
Anything else?
So go back to, what was the quote again? They don't put new wine in old wineskins. So,
that's right.
We can't put our new growth in our old ideas.
No.
Sort of, yeah.
Yeah, we have to be willing to...
So we have to be constantly changing. Even after we make this decision that's in front of us now, 6 months later we'll be making another one, and a year later another.
Yeah. Well, the great thing is that you just, if you live in that growth state of consciousness, thinking there's nothing wrong, there's challenges, and you're open to reviewing those challenges and constantly being in question of them and constantly being in question of what it is you're doing, then opportunities will come. That the law of attraction is that very thing. But in order to attract, in order to see what you might attract, you actually need to get rid of things. Otherwise, you're stuck and you can't see the opportunity. I've said this 100 times, that when you're looking for a Volkswagen Bug, you want to buy one and you start doing the research.
Now they're everywhere.
Now they're everywhere. Well, they didn't all just move to the city you live in.
I know.
They've always been there. But we are seek finding machines, right? So when we get an idea, then all of a sudden we start doot, 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 and then everything about that starts showing up.
I'm just thinking such a clear example for me way back in 1980. I had a crush on a new romance with a guy who was driving a old powder blue Mercedes. And all of a sudden they were all over Victoria, these powder, 20-year-old powdered blue Mercedes Benzes. So, yeah.
So you thought that guy was in every one of them?
No, well, I hope so. we tend to find what we look for, don't we?
Well, that's the way our brain is wired. When you go way back to when we were hunter-gatherer, when you were 3 days without food, your brain that's all it focused on, and anything that resembled food, it would notice and spot, and that's how we survived. Right? That primitive activity is still alive and well in us.
And it applies in every area. I often think about, I like to stay away from doctors because they look for stuff, and the more they look for stuff, the more they're going to find it. Right. But you can apply that to any area of your life. If you're looking for problems, what might go wrong? Have you thought, we're talking about an event we were planning, and somebody the first thing said, well, what about the weather? And the rest of us all looked and said, what about the weather?
Yeah, what are we going to do about it?
But it's training the mind.
Training ourselves.
This thing, as you say, is very powerful, but this thing is even more.
Yeah.
Your thoughts create your reality, folks.
Mm-hmm. It's true. At least it's what I believe.
Well, at least they create your experience of reality.
Yeah. The interpretation. We are meaning making machines.
You betcha.
Well, awesome. I don't have anything else to say about this other than maybe what I have to say is I love this community. I love that people care so much.
Yeah.
That there
even if they disagree.
That there's the willingness for people to disagree and have conversation. Like without that, we've got nothing. The fact that people feel comfortable and want to share their concerns because it all comes from a place of love and appreciation and wanting nothing but the best.
Right. And really, nobody's wrong or right.
No.
As a matter of fact, I love being wrong sometimes because it gets to make other people right.
Yeah.
And what a gift that is.
Yeah, and then they get
Costs
to go,
nothing.
ha ha. Told you so.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm okay with it.
Next. Okay.
It's great to see you again.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah.
I've been away.
I know, you haven't been here on Sundays, and
I know.
you haven't done these talks, and
I'm back.
you're back.
I'm back.
And everybody that's joined us, thank you for checking in, and thank you for supporting our channel and our community and Unity Vancouver Island, and
For being willing to change and grow with us.
and keep the comments coming, the questions coming, the concerns coming, the opportunities coming. That's without that, then it's just there's no fun then. Yeah.
Yep. And if you don't even know what Unity Vancouver Island is, we hope this has still been helpful. It's the truth for everybody.
Yeah,
Isn't it?
yeah, because all we've just discussed here can be applied to your life, no matter what
Everybody's
you're doing.
life, yeah.
Like you can look at your life and go, where am I stuck? Where could I grow? What could I let go of? You know. Like,
And once I've got myself all perfected, how can I help others?
Yeah. All right. Namaste.
Namaste. Namaste.
Thank you.